Now, this next lady, I've met her, it's been a couple of years ago, but I've had her on my radio show, and she's very unusual, has wonderful talents, and I think you're going to enjoy this. We have other psychics that are going to be speaking today, but Toni is different. She relates mostly to animals. And I think you're very well known in Texas, aren't you?
A lot of places, yes.
Because the big branches in Texas call her in to work with their horses. And you said as many as 26 horses on a ranch. And she communicates with the horses to find out what's wrong with them. And then she goes and tells the owner so they can tell the veterinarian. And she can even do this on the telephone, where people have horses or animals, and she can do it over the phone and tell them. She'll tune into the vibration. If I'm getting it wrong, you'll straighten me out. But she turns into the vibration of the animal even over the phone. And she says all over Texas, she's got a lot of business with the ranchers calling her with the horses, but also it's with other animals. And she also can communicate with animals that have crossed over. And she's going to be seeing clients while she's here. She's already seen some, she said, and she's going to be seeing more. But I'm going to let Toni tell you her background, how you got started, and what she does, because this is quite unique. Okay, Toni Trimble. Okay.
Thank you, Dolores. Well, good morning to everybody, and it's such an honor to be here with Dolores. I just think the world of her. I've read all of her books, so like we don't have a lot of available time, so I have to be careful what I want to read, otherwise. And Dolores doesn't want me reading anything, but this came on my email today, and it's kind of covers what I want to talk about today, about animals crossing over and what happens to them. Do they suffer? Where do they go? Do they have a soul? There's a lot of things that I hear on a daily basis from people all over the world. I have clients in Australia and Canada. I have a lot of people in Canada. A lot of my clients are horses, but I have an equal number of dogs and cats and birds. I've had things like sugar gliders. They're an exotic pet. They live in groups. And, most of the people that called me about them said, well, they're a group animal. It's like reading for a rabbit. And I said, well, I don't see what difference that makes, because we all live in groups. We all have a separate soul, so it doesn't matter if they're a herd animal. I mean, I can read cattle, just bucking bulls, just as well as I can read a dog or a cat. But anyway, I'm an immigrant to Texas. We call them damn Yankees at home. They're the ones that move there and won't go back, I actually was born in St. Louis and grew up around in the Ozarks of Missouri, so this is real familiar country to me. The Fayetteville and this whole area looks very homey to me. I've had horses for 35 years. I've ridden for 35 years, all kinds. I've done endurance and dressage. Right now I ride cutting horses, and they're my passion. I love them. I also have a yard full of dogs. I've got working dogs that work my cattle. I've got my little Jack Russell, who's completely rotten, who lives in the house. And she's not very happy with me today, by the way. She's in a kennel with the rest of the dogs because she doesn't think she's a dog. But I don't have to be in person with the animal. 98% of what I do is over the phone. And I believe it's a God-given gift. I don't really know any other explanation for it. I know I've been this way since I was a little kid. My granddad, who's half Cherokee, used to take me out into the woods and teach me how to hunt and track animals. And we come from kind of modest means. My parents are, parents of the 50s, and so I was the anomaly in our family, obviously. But I can remember as a very small child him hunting squirrel, and he shot the squirrel, much to my dismay. And all of a sudden, I see the etheric squirrel loping on off, like he just, thanks, and he went on home. And I'm looking down at the ground going, oh my Lord, what is that? Because to me, the squirrel had already left, and of course I burst into tears, and my grandfather was horrified. And then he had to explain to me that in Native American tradition, you say thank you to that animal for giving their life so that you can live. And it's an honor for the animal to do that for us. Well, that made me feel somewhat better. I'm still very much not good at goodbye with my animals. I'm much better at hello, even though I know where they go, and even though I see them when they've crossed over, it's still very frustrating to me. But I have lots of different kinds of clients. I've got people with show dogs, and I do look for lost pets, which is very hard because when they're gone, the longer they're gone from you, the harder they are to find because their energy field gets more distant from where you are. And, so a lot of my clients are high performance people, that run at the rodeos, or they've got bucking bulls, or they're high-powered jumping horses, or in the case of the show dogs, they were, the one case that I had, it was so interesting. This dog went missing, and it's a boxer, and it was a very well-known boxer. It's down in Florida. And the lady called me, and she said, our dog's disappeared. He's a champion. He's going to Madison Square Garden for the championships, and we can't find our dog. And so I described to her the people that had taken the dog and what they'd done with him. And as it turned out, it was the handler for the dog. Most owners don't show their own dog. And she said, oh my God, well, it couldn't be them. He wouldn't do that, And I said, well, I think it was. And the next thing I know, I get a phone call from her, and they had a sting operation, and this man had been stealing dogs as the handler and selling them for money as stud dogs. And I went, so she said, Toni, you won't believe what happened. She said they knocked this guy down, they cuffed him, they arrested him, and with 4 of his accomplices, and they got their dog back, and she was just like, how did you know that? And I said, I don't know, it's just your dog told me where he was, Those kind of things, you think, oh, that couldn't happen. Why would someone take a dog? Well, they do it for drug money. They do it because they're jealous. There's a million reasons. But anyway, so when Dolores asked me to come up, she wanted me to talk about what happens when animals cross over. So this morning I woke up at 5:30. I don't usually get up at that hour. But anyway, I was told to get up and check my email. And with her permission, I'm going to read a story that came across my email last night because it so speaks to what I want to talk to you about today. Being a veterinarian, I had been called to examine a 10-year-old Irish wolfhound named Belker. The dog's owners, Ron and Lisa, and their 6-year-old son, Shane, were very upset and hoping for a miracle. I found Belker was dying of cancer. I explained we couldn't do anything for Belker and suggested euthanasia in their home. We made arrangements. Ron and Lisa asked if Shane could be present since they thought he would learn from it. The next day, I felt a familiar catch in my throat as Belker's family surrounded him. Shane seemed so calm. Petting the old dog for the last time, I wondered if he understood what was going on. Within a few minutes, Belker slipped peacefully away. The little boy seemed to accept Belker's transition without difficulty or confusion. After a while, we wondered aloud why animals' lives are shorter than ours. And Shane piped up and he said, people are born so they can learn how to live a good life, like loving everyone and being nice. Well, dogs already know how to do that, so they don't have to stay as long. So, I know. I think that is just so profound that a little 6-year-old gets that, and we're so much more advanced, quote unquote, and older, you know. There have been so many times that people have called me, they especially called because their dog's passed over. Where's he going? Why can't I see him? You know, our hearts are breaking because that's our best friend. That is, it's like I told my son one time, he goes, I don't understand, you've got 7 dogs and 2 cats in the house and a bunch of barn cats. He said, why don't you just get rid of some of these things? And I said, no, those animals don't grow up and leave like you did. They stay here and they bring me joy every day and they make me laugh every day. And I think that that's just so important in our lives. And the older we get, the more important that becomes, in my opinion. I don't think they suffer. I've read for animals that have been hit by cars, that, a horse that's run into a fence suddenly and, the owners are devastated. This horse in particular knew she had a broken leg and was in so much pain. And the physical body suffers the pain, but the soul is gone. That's what we don't really get. The soul has already left the body. We are left with watching sometimes the pain that the physical body's going through. But our animal's not there. They're, like Dolores said last night, they're out here and they're looking at us going, why are they so sad? I'm going home. I'm out of here, But they can come back and forth and see us all the time. So I think that if we understood that about them, maybe, I don't know that the passing ever gets easier because we love them so much. But for me, knowing that they're not going to suffer, they go to that mid-astral place that Dolores talked about where everything's just beautiful. They have all their friends, cats and dogs and whoever they were with in this lifetime. They have their human friends. We're met by all of our animals when we cross over. They're waiting for us. Like I'm looking around this room and there's a lot of people in here, but I'm seeing a whole bunch of animals too. I don't know who in here had a big bird, like a macaw or something, but anyway, there's a big blue macaw sitting in the back corner there watching us. But I think that that's like this little boy said. They come here for just a few reasons: to teach us unconditional love, to give us joy, make us laugh, get us out of our own little world sometimes, because we all get in that it's all about me type thing, And for me, I think that's their greatest gift. I had the little dog I have now, her name's Noelle. I also think animals can come back to us as whenever they want to. And I didn't used to believe that, and I know it's radical, but I have seen it so many times with my own clientele. I have two horses, and this is just such a fascinating story to me because I call it trading places, I had a little girl call me one day, her and her mother, and their horse had just passed over. The horse's name was Cricket. And unbeknownst to me, I had read because I never remember what I tell people, so I had read for another family. The mother and the daughter had passed away in their living quarters trailer from carbon monoxide. They were at a barrel racing clinic, and the mother and the little girl died. Well, the father was so distraught, you can imagine, that he said, that's it, I'm going to sell that horse, I'm tired of it. Every time I look at it, it makes my heart break in two. So he sold the horse. He sent it to a horse trader, and they put the horse in a sale. Now, this is up in far east Texas. Now, the little girl that's still alive calls me with her mom, and she said, my horse Cricket just passed away. And we bought another horse. And I said, you know, I'm having trouble here because I'm still seeing Cricket there. Well, it turned out that the other horse's name was Pistol. Pistol wanted to be with his little girl, and Cricket wanted to be back with his little girl. So what they did was just make this soul agreement. And they said, okay, I want to be here and you want to be with her. Is it okay with you if we do that? And that's what they did. And it's the weirdest thing because this horse knows how to run a barrel pattern, just like he did before. He has the same little quirks like eating peppermints that he had before. And you know, now when I have people say to me that's impossible, I'm like, well, okay. That's fine. You know, if you think that's impossible, it's all right with me. You know, I'm up for anything. And so, you know, that happened about 2 years ago, I guess. And I had a 17-year-old Pomeranian. I'd never experienced this for myself. So I have the 17-year-old Pomeranian, and she got sick. She had congestive heart failure, and then, of course, she went into renal failure. And in spite of everything that I could do for her, it just got undoable. So she crossed over, and I told her to come back, you know, because she'd been my dog for 30 years. I know that sounds funny, but she'd been back 2 or 3 times. She'd been a Chihuahua a couple of times, and now she's this Pomeranian. And so I didn't hear from her. And I was like, yeah, I know that dog heard me, you know. Why isn't she paying attention to me? But that's how she was in life. She just was like, not doing it. I have my agenda, and here's yours. So about 1.5 years goes by, and I have a dream one night. It was 2 days after Christmas. And Nikki comes to me and says, I'm coming back in 2 months. And I said, great. You know, so I start looking around. I'm looking in the newspaper. I'm thinking, well, I'll find another Pomeranian. Oh, she had other plans. So I couldn't find anything. I showed up at a puppy mill one day. Now you can imagine how that affected someone like me. And I'm seeing this wall of cages with all these little dogs in it. And oh, I so wanted to just go, I think I'm going to call the police here, you know. And then I thought, no, these people live in my neighborhood. I might be driven out of town, you know, better not do that. But I couldn't find her. And so I thought, well, I guess she's just not going to come back. That was on December 27th. February 27th, I get a phone call from a friend. And she said, come and watch me. I'm up at the Houston Livestock Show at the rodeo. It's a lifelong dream. I'd love for you to be there. I said, all right. So I go and I watch a concert, and I'm having a good time. I took a friend with me, and my friend Laura comes up, and she goes, y'all come back to the trailer. I have something for you. And I went, what could you possibly have for me? And so she opens the trailer door, and out hops this little Jack Russell Terrier. Runs straight to me, jumps in my arms, starts licking me in the face. Her name's Noelle. And I said, oh my gosh, that's my dog Nikki. She said, I knew it had to be. I've tried to sell it 5 times and no one wants it. And she's just as horrible today as she was when she was here as Nikki. You know, can't tell her anything. I had to leave her at home in a kennel this weekend because they won't let me leave her at the boarding kennel because, of course, I don't want to give her shots. She gets reactions to them, and I don't like that. So I'm sure that she is going to give me what for when I get home on Monday. But, you know, she has all the same little habits, the same general personality. You know, it's just like she just hopped out of this body and came back through Noelle. Now, I would have had no way of ever predicting that. None. You know, and I get so many calls from people that'll say, you know, I really want my dog to come back, or I want my cat to come back. Cats are, to me, very special. They're so independent, and they're such little darlings, and they're intuitive. You know, they're just wonderful. But I can't make them come back. They'll come back when they're ready. It's their agenda, and they can come and go as they please anyway. They think we're weird because we can't see them. You know, someone asked me last night, was it at dinner? She's one of the speakers here, I don't see her. Anyway, her mother just passed away at 103, and she had this really wonderful cat that she loved. And as soon as her mother's soul left the body, the cat shot out of the room. And she asked me last night why that was, and I said, she was following your mother. You know, I mean, the cat could see that person's soul leaving the body and just wanted to go. Of course, the solid walls and things like that kept the cat from going anywhere. But, you know, our animals are they're such incredible beings, and they don't really have to be here if they don't want to. I mean, they come because we love them and because we want them here, and, you know, that's who they are. The other thing that bothers me is that the cloning. Are you in favor of that? You know, see, I think that's just wrong. Why are we interfering, you know, with something so wonderful, you know, and besides, yes, it'll look the same, but where's the soul energy that was our pet? It's not there. And just because that is a champion dog or a champion horse or a champion show cat, and you want to clone that, and you think you're going to have that same spirit there, forget it. They have a say-so in it, just like we do. When we come here, like Dolores said, you know, we choose who we're going to come to. They choose us. We don't choose them. Whenever I go to buy a dog or something, I know people think I'm nuts, in the same way with a horse, because I will go in there and be with the animals. You know, like whoever wants to come into my life, they'll let me know. And I try to tell people to do that. Just be with your animal. Be with that animal. As a puppy or a rescue from the pound, you know, try to invite them into your space, you know, and see if that's the one for you. I had a red heeler, I had her for 10 years. She was my constant companion. And she came into the house one day and said, I'm going to be leaving in a month. And I looked at her and I said, oh, no, you're not. No, you're not going anywhere, and I know you're healthy. I don't want you to leave. And she said, no, I'm leaving. So then, of course, me, you know, being the over-controlling, you know, I can prevent that, you know, right? I start watching her like a hawk. And every time I left the house, I would make sure that I saw where Brenda was, that was her name then, made sure she was in the house. Well, I left to go to a horse show one day, and they're very good at just kind of swooping out beside you, you know. Your dogs do that, I'm sure, and your cats. So she got out. Well, I have an old man that lives in my area who's got dementia. And he would drive through my yard, make the circle, and then drive back out. And, you know, it never occurred to me. He had a white truck. I drove a white truck. I come home that night, and my dog is out in the road. She'd been hit. Well, she was still alive. I rushed her to the vet. No, it was a no-go. She went into heart failure. And I was just ruined over it. I thought maybe I had done something wrong or caused this, or, you know. So the vet was so sweet. He let me stay overnight with her at the clinic, and her heart failed, and there wasn't anything they could do. And that was on a Friday night. Sunday morning, she woke me up and said, get the paper out. I want to come back. And I went, what newspaper? I live out in the country. She goes, get on the internet. All right, so I go and I look in San Antonio's paper, I looked in Austin's paper, I looked in Dallas, no red healers. And I'm like, I must have misunderstood, I guess, you know. So there was one ad for blue healers, and I thought, well, all right, I'll call that one. So I drive over there, and would you know, here is this one little red healer sitting in a kennel by herself. And I say to the lady, I really didn't want a blue healer, I wanted a red healer. And she goes, oh no, that one's for sale. My sister isn't for sale, my sister's buying that dog. Okay. She said, well, you know, you could go in there and you could look at her if you want to. And I said, I'd love to do that. So I go in the pen, and this dog comes from the far corner. Now, she'd been unsocial the whole time I'd been there, walks right over, lays on my feet, and looks up at me. And the woman that's selling these dogs goes, oh, no. She goes, well, that's your dog. What am I going to tell my sister? And I went, I don't know. She said, well, if you want her, you can buy her. And I said, I do. So for 6 months, I'm calling her Brenda Audrey, because I had to name her something else. I didn't want to name her Brenda again, so it became Brenda Audrey, like my mother used to go, Toni, Holly, Linda, you know. We had one name when I was growing up. And it's been the funniest thing, because she came back so quickly into her body, she was really disoriented. And at first I thought, man, I've really done it this time, you know. As the time has gone on, over the last 2 or 3 years, she's become her old self. We used to play ball nonstop. Now the other day, I tossed one of those jolly balls out to her, and the games are on again. You know, she wants to play. Sometimes when they do that and they come back so quickly, they're a little out of it, you know, so you have to realize that and just let them kind of get back into their self. But the cloning, you know, to me, if you do that and you don't give the animal time to decide when they want to come back, how they want to come back, what they want to do, you know, you're telling them what to do. They're there. They have a soul. Someone said to me this morning, that at breakfast this morning, that they were so hurt because someone told them that animals don't have a soul. And I said, what? No, I don't believe that either. I think that if God can say in the Bible that He knows when every sparrow falls, don't tell me that that sparrow doesn't have a soul. I mean, all these wonderful practitioners out here, we work on energy fields. When I'm doing my work, that's all it is my energy field connecting up with that animal or that person or this cat, you know. It's just an exchange of energy. Well, you can't have that if you don't have a soul. I mean, rocks have a soul. A tree has a soul. I hate it when a tree dies. I go and have a little ceremony for it because I just think it's so sad. And I don't let people cut trees down. You know, somebody came to the house one year and, oh, well, I'll trim up all those trees and I can cut this one over here. And I went, no, not today. I know it's in the way and I know it's trying to die, but you need to come back when I've had time to let that tree know where it's going. And you know, these old Texas rednecks, he's like, oh, yeah, well, all right. You know? Oh, that witch that lives down the road, you know. But, you know, I just don't, if you're going to clone something, you have the physical being, and it does have a soul, but it isn't the one you were expecting. It's its own other being, in my opinion. So, you know, I just, it's fascinating to me. I love reading for animals that are still here also, because there's so many things like this dog dying of cancer. You know, there's herbs available to us now that stop that. I mean, I'm not a veterinarian, and I would get in a lot of trouble at home for what they call diagnosing things. I have a lot of friends that are vets, and they don't bother me because they know that I'm here to help the animals, the horses and the dogs and the cats, all animals really. But there's so much in nature. There's herbs, there's acupuncture for dogs, and cats. There's chiropractic adjustments, Reiki for animals. You know, there's this enormous industry out there. It's just like with human beings. You know, I don't run to the doctor when I'm sick. I go to my homeopathic, you know, or I'll go to my chiropractor and tell him I'm feeling a little off or something, and he does kinesiology and we figure out what's wrong. I have a friend that does chiropractic adjustments for animals, and he uses kinesiology for the animals. And it's fascinating that you can touch this dog, you put your arm here, you know, and ask them a question, do you have cancer? If you get a strong pressure, it's like, no. If it goes down, it's like, yes. So if you ask the right questions, and you can, animals understand everything we say. Everything. I mean, that's why they sit there and do this sometimes, you know. Well, what are you doing? Yes, ma'am?
Talk about some of the work you do with the horses, how you
Sure.
communicate with them, and then they go and tell the veterinarians.
Oh,
Tell us a little
sure.
bit about that, how you work with the horses.
Sure, I'd be
Okay.
happy to. I have a lot of high-performance horses that come to me, race horses and top-notch barrel horses, ones that run at the NFR finals and things. And I can't tell you, there isn't a day that goes by that I don't get a phone call from somebody, and they'll say, I've been to 10 vets, and he can't find out what's wrong. All right. You know, so when I look at a horse's body, or any animal for that matter, but horses in particular, since I'm so familiar with their conformation, sometimes they'll give me a picture. Sometimes they run a video clip, like, you know, looking at a slide program of where they're hurting in their body. I've had several that have shown me things like a fractured hip. Impossible to x-ray for a veterinarian. What they want to do is put them on this thing and do a $3,000 bone scan, you know, and I'm like, why bother? If you know that it's there, put them on some herbs that heal up that bone tissue. You know, I have an herbalist that's a friend, and a lot of people who have osteoporosis, you know, she makes a product called Jurassic Dirt that people and animals can take, and it reconstitutes the bone in the body. So these horses that, you know, if, like a veterinarian, if he can't x-ray it, or he can't do blood work, or he can't palpate something, you know, he's done. And a lot of our animals, horses in particular, because they're out there on that cutting edge, it's no different than someone like Lance Armstrong. You know, when he's doing that Tour de France, you know, he's on that cutting edge. So his body is in under extreme circumstances. These horses are the same way. But that doesn't compute with a veterinarian. You know, they're just looking at this body. It's like picking up that piece of paper, and here it is, there's writing on it. Okay, I'm the vet, and I know what's wrong. You know, and a lot of times they do. I mean, I have to call my vet for sure. But horses have a way of saying, for instance, a long time ago, like 2 or 3 years ago, these horses started telling me that when I have ulcers, if you treat the ulcer in my stomach, then I'm going to get colonic ulcers in the hindgut. News to the veterinarian. As soon as we put that horse on a series of herbs, it healed up the entire digestive tract, and we didn't have to spend $400 on a little tube of stuff that lasts a month. You know, the herbs were $95. I mean, but these horses are so clever, and they are, about what's wrong with them. I knew when Big Brown didn't win the Belmont. Okay, now he was supposed to win the Belmont, that horse was. It was in his aura. You know what happened to him? No, that's what they want you to believe because they can treat that. No, what it was is the trainer decides in his extreme arrogance that he's going to pull that horse off of those drugs. 2 weeks before the biggest race this horse will ever run in his life, before the biggest race that man will ever see in his life. He pulls the horse off drugs he's been on for 2.5 or 3 years. What happened? The horse bled in. It didn't come out his nose, he bled in. That's why the jockey pulled him up. Will anybody own up to that? No. No. Same thing with 8 Bells at the Kentucky Derby. She was dead before she hit the ground. I saw it when I was watching the Kentucky Derby. She was coming down that final stretch, and she took her head and went like this, and I said to my son, oh my God, that horse just died. And he said, no way. And I said, oh, she's gone. She had an aneurysm. They won't admit that either. See, and I have a problem with that with the veterinarians because if you've made a mistake, say you made a mistake. I'm not 100%. I've made mistakes doing my work. So just own that.
But Toni, what happened to that last one, Big Brown? Could you pick up on that? All of a sudden he just didn't want to run anymore.
Well, but they call it bleeding in, and what happens is, you remember in the old days we used to have pleurisy?
Yeah.
That's what that causes.
Okay.
It bleeds in, and there's blood in the lungs, and it suffocates them.
Okay.
And the jockey, bless his heart, was intuitive enough to know that, and he just pulled the horse up.
Okay. Well, you've got to tell the story about the little people.
Oh,
before we go to questions, tell the story about the little people.
About that.
Okay.
Oh my gosh. I had not been doing this very long, and I got thrust into this life because Spirit wanted me to. I used to manage commercial real estate, and so I was doing readings for my friends and things a little bit here and there. And I get this call one night, and this lady goes, something's wrong with our horse. He's backed up into the stall, and he's like this, and we go in there, and he's just, shaking from head to toe. And I went, really? So I asked the horse, what is wrong with you? And he goes, there's little people in here, and they're eating my food. And I went, okay, so I'm supposed to say that to this person, All righty. So I told this lady on the phone, I said, I feel certain you're going to think I'm a complete nutter. But I just have to say it like I see it. This horse tells me there's little people eating his food, and he's afraid of them. Well, you can imagine how the rest of the phone call went. It was real quiet, and she goes, really? Okay. So I'm thinking, that's it. That's the end of this career, Well, thank you, God. if I wasn't supposed to do it, thank you for letting me go now. And about a month goes by, and at about 9:30 or 10 o'clock, I get a call on my home phone. I don't have one of those anymore, but she calls and says, Toni, and I forget her name. I'll call her Marion. This is Marion. Remember you read for me about a month ago, and you said little people were eating my horse's food? And I said, oh, yeah. She said, my husband just went from the biggest skeptic to the biggest believer. And I said, why is that? And she goes, because we were in the barn tonight. We went down to feed. We heard a little commotion. And she said there were 4 monkeys dressed in human clothes, and they were in our horse's feed trough, snarling at him and scaring him. And she said he was in the corner of the stall again, shaking. Well, see, to the horse, they look like people. He didn't know the difference, they're dressed in human clothes. I said, oh my gosh. I said, well, thank you for calling me back, because I was beginning to think that I was completely out there. A circus act. They were down the road, and they phoned the local police and said, we've got a bunch of monkeys in our barn. They got the same reaction, by the way, that I got, And they came down there and gathered them up, and they said, oh, well, thank you. They've been missing for about a month and a half. So,
Okay, they were hiding in the barn.
yeah, yep. Well,
The
they
horse
had
knew
good
more
food.
than the people do.
They
So they
do.
were smart.
Yes,
Okay, we
exactly.
got some time. Let's go for some questions. Okay.
Sure.
And she's got, Julie's going to take the mic on that side, and I'll have the one on this side.
Okay.
Okay. You can't say
right here
that was
first?
made up. The horse had to tell her to her.
Relationship with their main person?
What
Can they
is-
come in, to a different situation and be comfortable and have a good rest of their older years?
Yes, they can. Cats especially are so intuitive that that cat's person sits and holds that cat all the time. There's a chair that that cat sits on a lot, and there is a person sitting there. That cat's really not on the chair. Do you know what I mean? The cat's on that person's lap, enjoying the sunshine. Yes, ma'am.
Different race of animals, they have certain years in this earth, or they all live like 15, 20 years around that time?
That really depends. Our animals are more long-lived now than they've been in the past, mainly because we take better care of them.
Okay, because I heard that horses lived longer than dogs, let's say.
Well, the general rule of thumb is that the larger the animal, the shorter the lifespan. So in other words, like this Russian wolfhound, those will be about this tall. They are more short-lived than the little, like there's a little dog in the back, Coco, little poodle, 5 pounds. They'll be longer lived than the big dog.
Okay.
But it's not really specific to the breed or specific to being male or female. It's just the way they're cared for. It's how much people love them. If they feel like they're not loved, I've seen so many animals get themselves out of the situation. I mean, they'll run away. They'll get given to somebody else. They'll do some obnoxious things, and people get mad at them and give them away. They'll get themselves out of it.
And the other question is, do they take their owner's illness to save
can.
their owner's life?
They will, yes.
That's naturally from any animal?
Most of the time, it's dogs and cats that do that. My little dog Nikki that I told you about earlier, I was having heart problems, and she took my heart problems. But then she stayed sick, and I got well. But then I took care of her, even when she was older and infirm. Did it? Yeah. It's very, very common, and they're happy to do that, by the way. Yeah, it's their joy, and bless you that you recognize that. Because that's an honor to them that you got it.
Toni,
What? Who's calling me?
we
Yes.
had a set of English bulldogs, mother-daughter, and the mother passed when she was 6 years old, and the daughter became terrified all of a sudden of rain and lightning and thunder. Is that a normal thing to happen, or?
It is in the case of those dogs because the mother was always the protective one. It's no different than us losing a parent. All of a sudden, don't we feel exposed when our parents are gone? It's the same with an animal. And there are things you can do to help that dog, though. Is she? Yeah, she went home to be with mother. Okay.
This one, the mouth. I just wanted to say something to the people that may or may not believe what you're saying. I want to validate the fact that it really is real. I had a kennel for over 40 years, and I consequently have quite a few dogs in my house. And recently, my Yorkie was in labor, and she had one big pup, and I knew she had another one. So after quite a few hours, I took her to the vet, and she does the C-section. And she pulls out this pup, and she says, "Oh, I'm sorry, it's dead." I said, "No, it's not." And she looks at me really funny. I'd never met her before, the veterinarian. And she says, "It's dead. You know, I know dead." I said, "No, it's not dead, because I'm going to make it live." And so I did the little doggy CPR, you know, and I blew in its mouth and in its nose, and I did all the things that I knew to do. And he weighs 3 pounds now, and he's just a doll. But I knew the minute he was going to live, because back came a soul. Before he was soulless, he was a lump of nothing. And then he came back, and his soul came in, and I saw that, and I go, "Great, he's alive."
Yeah,
And,
he just didn't go past that point of no return.
yeah.
Yes.
I don't know if this applies to what you're talking about or not, but I wonder why. I'm thinking of different instances where I'll be somewhere, one in particular right now, there have been others, that a cat that they said did not associate with anyone, not even this woman's husband. But I walked, we had a group meeting there, and it jumped up in my lap, put his paws on my chest, and looked me right in the eye and just stared. Why did they do that? And I've had others, like a little dog that just won't, and their owners are just amazed.
It's past life recognition.
I wondered.
Because they've been with us in many lifetimes, you know, and when they find us again, like I read for a lady this morning, and her dog, she was never going to have a dog. And this dog was convinced that she was going to get back with that person. Yes, the dog lives with her now. Yeah, because she's been her dog in many lifetimes, and she just wanted to be back with her. So, yes, ma'am.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm a real dog lover. I've had a dog or two my whole adult life. My mother used to give all our dogs away, and I didn't want to do that, so I changed that. But the thing that distresses me so much are all the unwanted animals that get produced every year and that are exterminated in every big city in this country. And I wondered if you have any ideas about how to stop that epidemic.
Well, yeah, I mean, indiscriminate breeding, for one, spay and neuter.
Well, obviously.
Yeah, but you have to realize, too, that those animals have chosen that. And it's not for themselves. You know, I have a friend who's a vet up in, I think, Iowa, and she runs a spay-neuter shelter. And those dogs and cats that come through there so that they know that they'll be put down in a reasonable way. They don't want to, it ends their suffering. And a lot of these dogs that you see that are in shelters and things, they've got fleas, they've been mistreated, they've been hurt, they've been fought as dogs. I mean, I'm so glad they nailed Michael Vick to the cross for that. Aren't you? You know, I mean, hello. Back in the projects he went, you know, I mean, that's just wrong to treat an animal that way. But until we make examples out of people like that, when I'm ever in an animal shelter, I usually just say, okay, all you guys in here, I'm going to ask the angels to come and take care of you and to do whatever that needs to be appropriate for your lifespan here on this earth. And I think that if us as individuals would do that more often, we can't save everybody. We can't save every person that's on the planet right now. It's an unreasonable expectation. But we can ask for angelic help to speed them on their way home.
You gave a name for...
It is.
You gave a name for what rebuild bones in animals. Would you please repeat it?
Yes, ma'am. It's called Jurassic Dirt. And I'll give you the phone number. You can talk to this. Her name's Kathy McGlory. Let's see. Her number is 505-565-8634. Sorry, 8634. 505-565-8634. McGlory, McGlory. She used to do herbs for people. She's healed a lot of people from AIDS and cancer and things like that with just herbs.
Toni, my angels said for me not to give my animals commercial pet food. Can you tell me what you feed your dogs?
You know, I feed them as good a dog food as I can buy. I know that people say that commercial dog foods are no good, but there are some good ones. Diamond makes a good dog food. I feed lamb and rice to my dogs. And you'll find that, I love Walmart, okay, but Old Roy, no. You have to be careful with the kind of commercial foods you fix. There are people, and a lot of my, like fellow animal lovers, for lack of a better word. I've got a lot of friends that are herbalists and veterinarians and things like that. They say feed a raw diet, but see, our meat it's not even good for us anymore. So why would you feed it to your dog? And there's so much stuff in some commercial foods, like Old Roy is nothing but chicken beaks and legs and feathers. It's horrible.
I guess, is it my turn? Okay. I wanted to ask you about your dog, Audrey.
Uh-huh.
When you found her the second time, I assume that she was like 6 or 8 weeks old of take-home age.
Uh-huh.
But because Brenda's soul was in there, I guess my question is, when the dog was originally born, Brenda was still alive. Was the dog born without a soul originally?
No, they just traded places.
Oh, they traded. Okay,
yeah.
That's what
Brenda
I missed.
just wanted to come back, so she's like, "Hey, you're the only dog in the area.
Okay.
You need to trade places with me."
Oh, thank you. That's what I missed then. Thank you.
Yeah,
Okay.
you're welcome.
I had a comment about the Michael Vick case. I saw this yesterday. I believe it was on either 60 Minutes or one of the major news programs, that most of the times when they close these dog fighting organizations down, they have to put all the dogs down. And this time a woman went in, and I don't know her name, but she's an angel, and she was allowed to take 10 of those dogs and retrain them, and this was a story of how they had rehabilitated those dogs into family pets.
Yes.
And she said there are no untrainable dogs, they're just untrainable
Bad
people.
Owners.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I had a lost dog, it's been nearly a year ago, and it was a pit bull, but he was the family pet. This woman was absolutely devastated. We couldn't find Cinnabelle. She couldn't find her anywhere. And the only reason I remember this so well is because she spent 8 months looking for this dog. And when she called me, she said, "Please tell Cinnabelle not to fight," because I knew that's what had happened. They'd stolen the dog to make a fighting dog out of it. So every couple of days, I would reinforce that to that dog. Whatever you do, don't fight. Act like a wimp. Lay down, whine, cry. I don't care what you do. Pee on yourself, whatever. And after 8 months, she finally found the dog. It was exactly 30 miles away from her house, just like we'd talked about. The dog was in an animal shelter, just like we'd talked about. And she had become such an advocate for the dogs that that's all she did was spend her day on the internet. She found probably 100 dogs for other people looking for her dog. When we got the dog back, she said, "I just want to know how Cinnabelle's doing." And I said, "Oh, she's so happy to be back home." And she said she wants you to know she really didn't fight. But It's so disturbing when people take a beautiful animal. You know, in the Art Gang comedies, Petey was a pit bull. Those are not mean dogs. They're kind dogs. You know, it's what people do to them that hurts them.
Okay, we have just one more question, and then we're going to stop for lunch. Yeah, go ahead.
Yes, ma'am.
I just want to talk about my Russian blue cat named Mishu, who's about 5 years old, but he came into my life as a kitten to save my life. I live in the country, and a neighbor who's a very healer saw him hiding under a trailer. He wouldn't come. When I came home one afternoon, he was hiding under my deck, running away from dogs. Held out my hand. He came purring into my hand, and I don't know when he was born. I don't know how old he was at the time. He was very small, but a healer, I kept him inside for 3 months, but an animal communicator, that's the word, told me, because I was so disturbed. He was running all over the place later, and I was very disturbed emotionally, and so I said, can you help me? What's wrong with my cat? So she had this communication, and she said, your cat, Mishu, came into your life to save you because you were so stressed out. I lived alone. I had no help. She said, you're so stressed out that you're in danger of having a brain, what do you call it, a stroke. She said, you're right on the verge of having a stroke. And the reason he's so disturbed now is you've had visitors and people coming who are so disturbing, you're even worse off. And he wants you to pay attention to him going crazy instead of you going crazy. Okay. So I learned how to communicate with that kitten, and as I calmed down and saw what was wrong with me, the ego we talked about yesterday, I learned how to think differently, how to behave differently. And I want to say my Bach flower remedies have saved his life also.
Oh, I love
just for the record. And he now more and more is managing my life. And I let him. When he wants to go out, he won't go out his door. He looks at the big door. He makes me get up, go over and open it. And most of the time I do.
You know why? He's exercising you.
Toni is
He's making
Toni's
you exercise.
going to be here for the whole rest of the conference, and she's going to be available if anybody wants to talk to her, and appointments if you want to do psychic readings for your pets, if you have pictures or anything. But she'll be here so you can ask her more questions.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dolores.